I don't know. Anybody else? How's everyone else doing? Hey, Mark. Hey,
Hey,
Andrew.
how are you guys?
Doing well. Sir Bailey's joined. How you doing, Mark?
Hey,
Being safe?
Yeah, no, I've got a couple of friends who had their restaurants trashed, but other than that, I'm doing okay. I'm safe.
Oh, goodness gracious. Nina, how are you? I saw you at a post.
Yeah, I talked to Mark a little earlier, and I was just telling him, like, Tuesday and Wednesday I was pretty traumatized and I got depressed about everything, and then Wednesday on I got obsessive off of watching all these videos. Like, I just kept looking after news broadcast after news broadcast, and then yesterday I snapped out of it and got back to focus on some work, and today so I had to detach away from watching all the drama, or I just would be sucked into it again.
It's so hard, you know. Thank you for sharing that, Nina, and glad that you're able to pop out. But I think that this is home, so it's not like a news report somewhere else. Like, we have to live in this reality of like driving in these roads, and somebody might have had a bad day, and there's just the level of stress right now that we are facing with, or that we are faced with, and being asked to just be normal about, is just kudos to y'all for not losing it. Because yeah, kudos to y'all, because I know I got in my car the other day and just started driving around Joshua Tree. I had to get out of the house. You know what I mean? I had to just get out of the house, and I wanted to protest out here, but they're a little bit more liberal with their guns out here. I already had someone pull a gun on me out here already.
Oh my God. A police officer?
Are you serious?
No. So believe it or not, I had a friend who I was dropping off. She lived in an unincorporated part of Joshua Tree. And, I picked her up from the airport, and we were just sitting in front of our car talking on a dirt road. And I see the blinds of, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's 2 houses on the street, dirt road. But I see the window, the blind come down, and next thing you know, door busts open. A guy with a scope and a rifle pointed at my chest, and he said, "What?" He said, "What the hell are you doing here?"
Oh my God.
That's so wrong.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
God.
was like, "Yo, I gotta go, man."
Oh my God.
Yeah, but
That is horrible.
that's no, I don't. I'm not. Yeah, it's just.
I'm just hoping that this thing doesn't escalate to gun violence. I really, a lot of semi-automatic weapons are out there right now, and if people don't believe that, if they think that the military is not going to do anything, people are going to take it into their own hands, and that's where it's going to get ugly.
Good. Let's I want us to obviously I don't want us to dwell too much into what's happening, but I do believe that current events are super important for the work that we're doing. I think the vision that we have, my hope is that we can kind of like Nina was saying, like, use this opportunity as artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, founders, to make our art better, to challenge ourselves, challenge our thinking, put the solutions that we put forth, hopefully they are that much more complicated, or not complicated, but that much more sophisticated,
Rich.
as a result of these activities. Because I think that that despair is a very slippery slope, whether it's anger or sadness or whatever, and I think that we are among the lucky ones, right? Because we kind of know what we're good at, we know what our art is, and we have an ability to do something about that, right? So let's remember let's remember George Floyd. Let's remember, the countless others. Let's remember the police force that are out there and are trying to make a paycheck. Obviously, like the politicians and all that kind of stuff. We are all operating on very high alert. But let's use our time wisely, and let's be smart about it. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. Thank you again to everyone for joining. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Fantastic. So per usual, guys, I got some interesting links for you guys. First of which is a design thinking exercise. So again, like, just all the stuff that's been going on, I'm just realizing, we all have this love language and we are not communicating the right way. And design thinking teaches us that empathy is a really great way, and Marina can, probably attest to this, to start, building walls, or excuse me, building walls. We want to take down walls, breaking down walls and building bridges. And so more on this ideal exercise to come later in today's presentation. But I want you guys to start familiarizing yourself with a little bit of design thinking and, some of the activities that the product team has done. Again, just being the user that I am, a person of color from Los Angeles, who worked in marketing, I really was just kind of, I went to, what was comfortable for me. So I was like, trying to see what the major brands that I enjoy, their products or their services, what they were doing. Adweek had this really, really great article on how current brands are tapping into nostalgia from slavery generations, from slave generations, in order to continue to make money. And so, I would just encourage you guys this week to explore the values of the brands that you
good. You got definitely the jacket.
Is that Sir Bailey?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was off mute talking to someone in my house.
Oh no, dude! I thought you wanted to say something. Oh, no worries. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, so check out the guys that you want to shop with, right? One of the most powerful things that we can do is vote with our dollars, right? And so if we can develop some organization around there, I think that is going to be beneficial. But again, we just want to develop empathy and understand how we got here, right? Alice Walker is a author of a famous book called Color Purple. You might have seen the movie.
Yep.
I really dug into her poetry this week, today mostly, but I would really encourage you to explore a TED Talk that she did around developing a global heart, right? We want to start working with everyone. We want to help everyone. In tech news, the Facebook team is starting to organize and revolt against, Mark Zuckerberg in some ways, or at least doing, their own signs of protest, which I think is interesting considering, how important firms like Facebook, Google, et cetera, are going to be in terms of, the next 25 to 50 years of human evolution, right? So let's consider how Facebook and these companies are treating their employees, when to, use their platforms and make statements. And then the last link that I want you guys to check out is regarding Nipsey Hussle and some of his understanding of land use and land use planning, how specifically his neighborhood of Crenshaw and Slauson, through by design, quite literally became a population for, the underserved, right? And, there were some systematic ways in order to make sure that people were kept there, right? And so his forward thinking was using his art, using his music as a means to revitalize his community, to, get equity back into the community and to provide opportunities for future generations. So yeah, I hope that you guys check out some of those links when you have time. Does anybody have any questions or anything they want to contribute before we hop into the brunt of today's meeting?
No.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So we are about 10 minutes in. Everyone seems to be doing the best that they possibly can, considering, the climate of today. If you need someone, you need a friend, you need to talk to somebody, hit me up, hit somebody in this community up. Let's, again, just be resources for each other. We're going to talk a little bit about, what we worked on last week, some of the progress that we were able to make. We're going to talk about what our focus is on this week. We'll discuss some opportunities for the team to, participate and help out in some ways that we need. And then we'll be on our merry little way. So, Nina, are you on the line? Ms. Womack, can I get you to take off your mute?
Yes, I'm here. I'm making dinner while I'm listening. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're cooking. All right, Andrew,
Yeah.
you're in front of a computer. Can I get you to read the story on the screen, Mr. Williams, out loud for us? Do you mind? And on that note, I think he just fell off.
Things aren't always what we think. Things aren't always what we think. 6 blind men go to observe an elephant. One feels the thigh. Or Andrew reading?
Sir, go for it. You're doing great.
Okay. I didn't know if that was me or him back in. One feels the side and thinks the elephant is like a wall. One feels the tusk and thinks the elephant is like a spear. One touches the squirming trunk and thinks the elephant is like a snake. One feels the knee and thinks the elephant is like a tree. One touches the ear and thinks the elephant is like a fan. One grabs the tall. One grabs the tall and thinks it is like a rope. The tail, sorry. They argue long and loud, and though each was partly in the right, all were in the wrong.
Thank you for that, Sir Bailey. And hopefully the story wasn't lost on you guys. Again, I love stories. I love words. I love how they are able to help us understand common uniting themes. I think data visualization is a lot like the example of this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a bunch of blind people all trying to make sense of something that they can't quite see the whole picture of, right? And so as we go through this process of, of interpreting so much data, right? Like millions of years of human history and how, some of those decisions have allowed us to get here, and what current economic climates are looking like, and what people's purchasing behaviors are like, and how people feel after, due to 50 years of systematic oppression. Like, these are very, very complicated things, and we're trying to make sense of it, right? And so, as we go through this design thinking process, or this prototyping process, or this research process, we are all doing our very best, right? And tools make some of this a lot easier, right? But in a lot of ways, we're really making educated guesses. But that being said, we have made some awesome progress, team, regarding our product team. I've been very excited about Luna and Marina's collective leadership. Marina, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're willing, would you mind talking a little bit about maybe some of the work that we've done over the past week? If not, I can hop in.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Awesome.
Hi everyone. For those who don't know, I'm Marina. I'm a service designer and experience designer in LA, and I run a design lab that is soon going to be a design school for social justice. So I have known Terrence for quite a while and kind of seen the birth of Food Tribe, which is really cool. We're actually in an incubator program together where I launched my podcast and he launched Food Tribe. And right now I am working on the product team with Luna and a handful of other fantastic folks to try to come up with a product or service or experience that's TBD for the next 90 days. So to try to come up with the next thing that Food Tribe is going to focus on as a way to gain momentum, kind of get on the map and start working towards its visions now for the longer vision. So we've been talking the last few weeks a lot about the different stakeholders within the Food Tribe ecosystem. And what do all of those pieces look like? So we're really thinking broadly to help identify where we're needed the most, and what can we do in the next 90 days that's going to be the most effective and useful for the communities around us, and then how that's going to lead into our future, how that's going to lead into like the future visions. So let me see, what's the best thing to share? So as of right now, we've identified a lot of the big ecosystems. So there are things like, actually, yeah, that's super helpful. Restaurants and all of the different key players. Terrence, if you don't mind zooming into the restaurants board, and I'll kind of give that as an example. We've looked at, so some of these key ecosystems, restaurants, institutions, supermarkets and supply chains, consumers, underserved communities, and then the source, nature, so like the source of where everything comes from, nature and the supply chains. And then we've narrowed down all the different demographics within each of them, right? So like within the restaurant ecosystem, we've got the cooks and the owners and the workers that are out of jobs, the people that go to restaurants, all of the different pieces. And our next steps are, we did a lot of synthesis to see what everybody is thinking and how we're leaning in terms of what to do next. And we've narrowed down to a handful of key stakeholders that keep coming up within our conversation. So that means those are the ones that we're looking at serving now in the next 90 days. That doesn't mean they're going to be the only ones, and it certainly doesn't mean they're going to be the ones that we look at in the future. So we're going to be looking at those and creating some empathy maps for them, creating some leading questions that we call how might we questions in the space of service design. So one example of that might be, how might we utilize the resources within the restaurant community to help the restaurant frontline workers that are impacted by unemployment. So we're trying to narrow down very, very specific needs for these demographics so that we can create a campaign around that to serve them as a means of giving Food Tribe momentum. Look, as we seek out funding, kind of seek out funding to be able to do this, to create actionable change right now as we work on the overall mission for Food Tribe. So kind of all of those goals in mind. And then within a couple of weeks, we'll have a couple of ideas that we'll move forward with.
Awesome, Marina. Thank you for that.
Covered?
Yeah. That was awesome. And we've got some really great team members that have focused on product for us. We've got Mateus, who, again, he is a former head chef at the U.S. Embassy in Paris. Marina and Luna are two very, very intelligent service designers that just have really great chemistry together. Like, they just work really well together. It feels like this is the second time that we focus on a Food Tribe collaboration together, but they work really well together. And then Vincent, and we've got just a really kick-ass team of thinkers. And so, part of our homework this week was, again, to just go through some of these different stakeholders that we're looking to attack. Luna actually asked me, she wants me to make, I think Emma's trying to get in. Oh, there's Matthew. Sorry about that, guys. And so Luna asked me to, try to make a little bit more sense of some of the content, or some of the keywords and some of the themes, the phrases that seem to keep popping up. And so this week I spent some time hopping into data visualization, right? And so, we have to talk, when we're talking about data visualization, or, understanding data or interpretation, right? Obviously it comes down to like a couple different things, but, really we want to focus on, whether or not we are, measuring a qualitative or quantitative data, right? In this instance, we're mostly working with qualitative data, because this has been, pretty anecdotal. We are doing some online research and pulling links there, but haven't really performed too much first-party data, and hopefully I'm not incorrect saying that. But that doesn't mean that this data is any less valuable, right? There's all sorts of things that we can start doing. And so, again, as someone that loves words, like, there is a technical aspect to words and to language and linguistics that we really want to understand. And so, I've been diving into, what are some of the different tools that we use in order to communicate, complicated campaigns, themes, experiences, et cetera, right? There's all sorts of like word games that we can do, and then understanding like symbols and emojis and GIFs and, all sorts of like really great stuff, right? And so where I need a little bit of help, right? And this was a conversation that took place, I think has been taking place in a lot of ways. And I think it's being reflected on a very micro level right now, which is why I'm bringing it up. And I think that it's something that, has been occurring, or that has occurred for a very long time, right? And so for a minute, I just want to take us to, again, as a reminder, this is our 7th meeting regarding our restaurant bailout committee. When we originally met on our very first call, it was all very organic, right? We are quite literally open sourcing a business model, plan, et cetera, whether or not we all executed against it together, right? But the idea was that we came together around these, tangible, or not so tangible, but very esoteric keywords, phrases, feelings, et cetera, right? And so when I got this process started, in terms of trying to make, at least trying to make enough sense of the momentum that we had in order to create, a couple tangibles that are very important for a business plan in the form of a mission statement, a vision statement, and values and principles. That was, for sure my best interpretation of the conversations that we've had, where we were, and, obviously my vision for the future. Now, certainly, as this process has become a little bit more mature, things change, right? Which is totally cool. And like, I want us to all feel comfortable with that. But this week, I really want us, as we start this process of visualizing this data that we all have access to, right? In the form of language, keywords, phrases, sentences, et cetera, that are going to be important to us. Let's really spend some time being very clear on our mission statement, our vision statement, our values and principles, particularly our vision statement. Now, some of the hang up that we saw in our products committee this past week and subsequent meetings was regarding certain phrasing, right? So in our vision statement, we mentioned a technological solution to the hunger problem made possible through members of the African diaspora. And as a result of that, there were conversation points, right? Where, certain phrasings might have made certain communities feel excluded within, the committee, right? The side that I can, defend and stipulate or speak to is that, when I hear the phrase African diaspora, sorry, I think Emma's trying to get in. She's trying to get in. Apologies, guys. Yeah, they're both trying to get in. Hey, Emma. Hey, Sir Bailey. Just bear with us for a little bit, guys. We're talking about our mission statement and our vision, okay? So we'll get you guys in here. But so I can talk honestly from my experience, with Food Tribe. My experience with Food Tribe was highly related to, my own personal identity and the community that I felt that I mostly identified with. Not to say I didn't identify with subsequent groups, right? And I think when I hear the words African diaspora, to me, all people are one and the same. And so, regardless of, your ethnic identity, your cultural identity, your nationality, right? I truly believe that, we are all one people, and we just have, a bunch of different nuances that make us unique and individuals, right? And so I really want us to consider, that specific phrase, the African diaspora, what it means to you. Just diving a little bit deeper and being vulnerable with you guys. So much of what we're talking about is, quite literally like systems being created in order to exclude groups, right? And I think Emma and I actually this was a point of one of the conversations that she and I had earlier or last week, which was regarding the exchange of value. And so, again, when we mention, members of the African diaspora, it's okay. We are all one of the same people. We are all coming to the same place in order for us to eat, right? And the exchange of value is our investment into you, into your community, to make sure that you have a tent pole in industry, something that you can call your own, right? That could never be taken away from you. And so, but certainly people have different interpretations of that data, and we want to be sensitive to that as we consider, the magnitude of this project, right? Is this a vision that we are going to be married to? And, does that mean that this, has a shelf life of 90 days, that this is a company that, we continue to invest in, in the next 1 to 5 to 10 years, right? What I can say just again, and I just have been direct and open, as honest as I can be, right? As comfortable as I feel being. I've spent a lot of time developing this company and this brand, and, part of separating it and allowing it to grow for sure is allowing other people's opinions to, start painting this picture, right? I just want everyone to, I think the origin story is just so important, right? The origin story is just super important, right? And I want us to consider that as we begin this process of visualizing data. Nina, did you want to hop in? Oh, let me.
Yes, I raised my hand. I'm a little confused with the vision statement personally, because I don't see the solution being formed or being solved by just the African diaspora. We have you know, Asian, European descent, all kind of descent. So I'm not sure where you're going with that exactly. I mean, and I totally support, you know, of course I'm a
Sure.
Black woman. So, but I'm just saying, I think that why couldn't it just be left out, or by, you know, why are we saying the African diaspora when it's not all members of the African diaspora?
When it's not only members of the diaspora.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Nina.
Are you gonna respond or no?
We're doing open dialogue. So the way that I think my interpretation of what we are saying is that the product is for and the service, the benefit is for members of the African diaspora, so that they can develop their own legacy. Not necessarily that the team is members of the African diaspora facilitating the solution. Does that make sense? So it's empowering people to have the solution themselves, and we are vehicles of the solution.
I think just reading the phrase "made possible through" kind of implies what Nina's saying. It's almost implying an exclusivity.
Say the last part for me again, Mark. You cut out.
The phrase "made possible through"
Uh-huh.
it implies some level of exclusivity, like the solution is being made only by, or it's only benefiting the community.
Okay, that's good feedback. Emma, you are nodding. Did you want to contribute?
Well, yeah, because I remember you and I are kind of, when we had our discussion a couple days ago about kind of what you really wanted in terms of how you're visualizing this project, I'm looking at, like a blueprint project that we can put everywhere, but most definitely in underserved communities, specifically in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is a really great source of it's a great little, it's a, what do you call it? A pot, mixed pot, so whatever. My brain's dying, but where the people that are underserved are all shades of brown and Black. So when you're discussing about food in particular, I'm from my perspective, I'm thinking of a more diverse a diverse community that we just happen to make sure we focus on possibly the African diaspora. I feel like if we're talking about ghost kitchens and building them and lifting up, Black-owned businesses and Latino businesses and Asian businesses, I think it should be very clear that we offer something very specific and we focus on each one as opposed to just one. Because I agree with I think it was Nina, where I'm a little I don't know if I want to contribute, of course, to helping the Black community have food security, have access to all of these things. I just don't know if I have the expertise besides listening and supporting for a project that's specifically for the community.
That's great. I like the distinction or the nuance with food, and I also I do like that portion, about not being an expert, and I think that, or excuse me, Emma, apologies, but I think that is also a part of at least my interpretation is that, again, we are not this project, right, is a solution only because those individuals told us that this was the solution that they required, right? And so, it's much more less about, right, the value that I'm able to add as it is about the value that I'm able to contribute to someone else. And so, I think that certainly there's some massaging that obviously needs to take place. I also want to point you guys to this So when we look at, again, like how people define things, right? Well, there's just like these two words. It's who coined this? Was this all marketing? And so there's this very broad kind of definition that states the African diaspora consists of the worldwide collection of communities descended from native sub-Saharan Africans or people from sub-Saharan Africa, predominantly in the Americas, right? And then if you go down a little bit further, it sounds like there's some consensus that the phrase African diaspora, though coined sometime earlier, gradually entered common usage at the turn of the, excuse me, that wasn't the part I was talking about. Oh, the African Union's definition, defines the African diaspora as consisting of people of native African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of their citizenship and nationality, who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the African Union, right? And so again, like that to me is a little bit more of an inclusive definition if we are considering that everyone, right, at some point in life, their ancestors, their people, all humans came from Africa. But so this week, I don't want to spend too much time on this, guys, unless somebody wanted to contribute something else before we moved on. Because this is, again, I think that this is a great time in considering what's going on right now. Nina, your hand's up. Is your hand up?
This is Stephen. I have something.
No, let me put it down. Sorry.
Sure. And welcome, Matthew. Go for it, Stephen. Sorry.
Yeah, I think going back to the vision and mission statement, I think it would be helpful not so much focusing on who is doing the work, but really better define what the pain point is, right? Like what specific pain point are we talking about? What community are we talking about? And then I think naturally we can go into like, okay, maybe a community helping its own members. That kind of, but
okay.
It's clear to me looking at the mission statement or the vision statement what the problem really is. Food is a huge, it's multiple industries kind of coming together. So are we talking about communities that do not have access to healthy restaurants? Or are we talking about food deserts in which they don't have, say, grocery retail outlets? What is the actual food problem that we're trying to solve? I think the idea maps are very helpful, but I think it's going to be hard to move this project forward without getting a little more specific as to what the problem is.
Or what problem, what battle we want to fight here.
Right.
And I think, Emma, to your point, what you were talking about earlier about like LA being a representative community,
melting pot, yeah,
provides us. It's a good. I think that from a narrowing perspective, narrowing this down to a specific community and looking at the lessons learned that can be applied to other communities, whether they be similar to in ethnicity or being applied to other areas where there are similar problems in terms of the supply chain from a food perspective, or from a water perspective, or what have you. Starting narrow and getting some common lessons and methodologies together, and then applying it to broader and broader communities, I think makes more sense. And I think it's kind of what you were saying, Stephen.
I totally agree. I think this could be a wonderful test case that if you're successful in one community, you can then apply this as a template to help others. So it might be a little more tangible, a little more scalable if we start more in a more manageable, small fashion, focused about it.
So the problem that the conversation that was started was, how do we solve the problem of hunger, right? Which is, we're seeing the results of that, right? This is a multi-layered, very, very, very complicated problem, right? And Andrew, did you have your hand up? Sorry. You're muted.
I do, but I'll after you.
No, go for it. Go for it. It's a complicated problem. I don't know if it's as much the vision statement or the problem statement then.
It's so part of Luna and I were thinking about this. Actually, the reason this came up was in more from a tactical standpoint than anything else. So, a lot of right now we're coming from a very divergent. We're looking at this from a very divergent perspective because we're analyzing the entire landscape of what solving hunger means, right? We're taking this opportunity to look at what does this mean to us as a community coming together? What does this mean to Food Tribe? And a lot of times when it comes to kind of breaking the tie or narrowing down the focus so that we can have a tangible set of things to go for as we work towards this greater vision. A lot of how we break that tie or try to get answers is to look at the mission and the vision statements. I think the mission and the values make a lot of sense for Food Tribe, but I think the reason that the specificity of the vision statement, the reason why it caused confusion is because it sounds like completely different companies with completely different mission. And so it's more like, if we're acting up per the vision statement, which, you know, we should be, if we're trying to do something that's like the North Star for us, that's a completely different set of solutions. And we would almost have to scrap a lot of what we've been talking about or go more narrow. And it's just like, you know, like I would lead it differently as a discussion, working towards finding a solution. So I think that's where a lot of the confusion lies, where if that's it and that's the true vision, then we need to rethink a lot of what we've talked about to make sure we're delivering on it.
Okay.
Marina, I think, you know, you guys have taken on such a great, this is such an ambitious and wonderfully, such a wonderfully grand goal and vision. It might help to add a problem statement.
Yeah.
Maybe work backwards that way, rather than starting with a mission or the vision. Start with a problem and then reverse engineer. If that might be one way to process it. Just a thought.
We have a problem statement, but it feels like it needs to be readdressed. Matthew and Andrew both have both raised their hands. I'll give Andrew the floor because he's unmiked, and then Matthew, you can hop in next, okay?
Yeah, thank you. I'm having a bit of a challenge with my internet connectivity, but I did put in the chat several important reference points. I believe in the first instance.
Oh, he cut off right when he started talking.
No.
That's a bummer.
Did he disconnect?
No, he's still, I think he just hopped out. Oh, there you go, Andrew.
Yeah, go ahead, let Matt, I'll type and let Matt talk. I'll type it in the chat.
Matthew, go for it, dude.
Okay, well, it was kind of piggybacking off of what Marina said. Whenever you're trying to solve different types of problems, just to use a comparison in the political space, like if you're an organization or activist group trying to solve a problem and you're going to try and get funding or assistance from the government or any other entity, the broader your scope, the more difficult it is. It's going to be more difficult it is for you to get funding or get any sort of help. So if we want to get the most attention and the most assistance when we reach out, or if we reach out, we would need to kind of narrow the scope. I think that makes the most logical sense. And I think that's what's at issue here. It's a little bit too broad, and we need to look at this more in the micro, as someone mentioned kind of indirectly earlier, instead of the macro.
So just to kind of just devil's advocate, that's actually, so we were talking about like scarcity and like those like economic models last week. And I think that one of the concepts that kept coming up for me during some of my research was this concept of the rational economic man, which I encourage you to study on your own, right? But so a lot of these problems that we've been discussing regarding, you know, economic policy, the way that we treat each other, et cetera, well, there are some economic scientists that believe that, you know, it is rooted in this, you know, philosophy that has permeated to this, you know, global economy, right? And the competing school of thought that has seemed to have risen was, okay, well, let's not totally discount rationality, because rationality is super important, but then how do we incorporate our humanity into the process? And so, you know, I'm not discounting the importance of having a narrow focus, right? I think the challenge though is like when you have this problem that has been a million-year problem, you know, there's a certain mythos that is required, in my opinion, right, in order to get people to convince them to adopt these changes that we're talking about, right? So when Terrence Mayfield talked to us a few weeks ago about like 1,000-year business strategy, certainly, like, you know, it's important that we have a macro vision of who we are, where we want to go, right? so that we understand the scope of like how long it took us to get here and how long it's going to take us to get there, right? And then we can reverse engineer what those very practical things are. So if we are, you know, keeping our visions, or I love, Marina, your portion about the vision statement being competing businesses from the vision statement. So I want to dive into that. It sounds like we need to dive into the problem statement as well. And I think that, you know, just thinking out loud here, we also then have to maybe get more narrow in terms of what the objectives and key results of the mission statement, the vision statement, and the values and principles on an interval basis, right? So if we've already looked 30 years in the future, well, what then is this going to look like in 10 years? What then is our mission going to be in 5 years? What then is going to be our mission in 1 year, right? In order to have kept us honest. I see 2 hands up. Is that Marina or Andrew? Who wants to go first?
Oh, my hand's been up for a while.
Oh, I can't see. I can't. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do too much. Emma, go for it.
Okay, so I just kind of want to reiterate that, you know, all of the mind maps and all of those things, I feel like we're putting a lot of, and trying to figure out, you know, like this larger scale idea. That footwork has already been done, and I think that should be in the research subcommittee. I think that it's a beautiful experience in terms of educating yourself about the food system, but that can be done on people's separate time. We already know right now that in terms of the issue regarding hunger and food specifically is, and the stakeholders that we identified is the needs of the stakeholders are equity, right? So we need social, educational, living material, financial, intellectual, and cultural capital for people, all in the space of some kind of food system that we can build. And I'm gonna keep harping on that land project that you wanna do, because I can already see, you know, getting a piece of land around, you know, that USC area where they're kind of investing, but not, and getting a food co-op there, offering community investment in the projects through micro, you know, crowdfunding with the community, offering people to be able to invest in the projects going on at like the minimum 500 scale, but letting them like $500, you know, investment, but letting them pay that off in payments, but they still get their investment. Nico Eco Park is doing that, where the community can invest in the buildings and the community themselves and get their kickback, you know, so they're invested. And then, you know, like I said, like when we're talking about a restaurant bailout, like I'm looking forward after COVID of how do we utilize all of these new technologies, like you're saying, like ghost kitchens and a delivery system. How are we going to save some of these local, specifically local, you know, food concepts that are dying right now? Do you know what I mean? And offering, you know, in terms of fundraising, offering these people, hey, come into our ghost kitchen, being able to be sustainable by having all of these food concepts. And because we can order certain things to scale, like actual real compostable, you know, utensils and things, being able to look at the most material, you know, food thing that people are having across the board, like rice. How many cultures use rice? Being able to actually order to scale organic, you know, kind of getting in there, connecting people, saving local food concepts that are dying because of COVID, making sure that all of the cultures in Los Angeles here are represented in those food things, and food access for everybody.
So Emma, are you suggesting that the supply chain for restaurants get changed by this?
No, I'm saying like the so in some ways I would like so all of these ghost kitchens, my idea would be, you know, all of these different food concepts, but I'd like them to order together. So from, you know, from a supplier. So, you know, it's a bigger order. And one of the issues right now with especially local farmers and large, you know, large food businesses is that they can't, you know, if their crops fail or something, right, or something is, you know, the season's bad for this or that, they kind of lose out on people, you know, buying their stuff. So being able to have a strong enough food business with enough people wanting to buy certain products, like again, like rice, and being able to actually commit to buying for, like for that year or that crop or whatever they're doing, kind of just making all these relationships and building all of these commitments and tying. When I talk about this whole concentric circle, being able to have restaurants that have connections to local farms, and then even bigger out for larger suppliers for things that we might not be able to access. But I think it's very much, we need to create a blueprint of a small food web that we can execute and engage community in, utilize the technology that's vastly starting to become very apparent in how we're going to save the restaurant industry while maintaining, the health, because we don't know when COVID is going or what's coming next. And I also want to create green spaces. So getting that land, peppering it with ghost kitchens around the area, having a brick and mortar farmers market that the local people can, like a farmers market that's a food co-op that the local people can have membership to at a very small minimal cost. And then people who don't live in that community can, pay that larger chunk of the fee. And of course, green space. I just kind of I like building communities, and I think that can be something that we can achieve, get funding for, either from the government or even from investors. I know somebody who's going to get me in contact with somebody who's really interested in the idea of forming communities in terms of like a blueprint, something that you can pick up and place anywhere. So my whole idea, bouncing off of Terrence's idea of I want to get land, is I think we need to look at or at least the strategy, the overarching strategy of what we want to do is, be an incubator for for new food systems.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm glad you're recording this, Terrence, because she is what Emma's managed to do is to define a problem, a product, and an outcome.
So what I do.
She did the chair flip. That's what she does.
No, I'm telling you, as a media storyteller, and I'm sure Nina's resonating on this right now, I can see exactly what the story is here.
Yes.
This is about defining localized food, the localized supply chain for restaurants, and redefining what the community restaurant looks like. And that expands because you're now attacking the supply chain. Food chain now benefits the broader community, not just the restaurants.
That's awesome.
What you're doing is you're now creating community ownership, which solves a lot of cultural problems associated with it. You bring the localized flavor to that community, but you're not changing the existing restaurants. What you're doing is you're creating a new way to address restaurants in a localized community. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. I mean, again, I want to, when I was thinking about how do I make like larger restaurants, sustainability, they've got the capital to be able to, invest in, making their menus, zero waste, or their kitchens and everything. But it's the smaller places that can't afford. Sustainability is really for the upper middle class right now. So being able to bring people together and have that that brute force and more money in a pocket from the community, we can literally invest in that space on that land, an electric composter that turns our food waste into compost. We can sell that, we can use it on the land, and we can literally sell that compost because the community is already invested in it, sell it to all of the local nurseries. Like Figure Supply is a big community nursery that deals with a lot of people kind of, again, in upper middle class. So that price point can be really nice and juicy. So like there's just a lot of opportunity in one space for us to let the local, taco stand that's dying, we can offer them like, hey, you know what, you need to be able to utilize, organic corn, or we need to hook you up to be able to have your cornmeal, your maize, whatever. Shoot, I'm not as Latin as I look. I swear to God. I wish I was. Instead of the tortillas.
masa.
Thank you. The masa, right? We need to hook you up with these wonderful people that are going, doing stuff in Mexico, that are doing, heirloom corn and everything. And from there, if nobody else is using heirloom corn in these food concepts, that is when we expand and we do outreach and we talk to food businesses that are already surviving, and we say, hey, do you want to switch over to this and come and do a big group buy? And that's how we start to kind of spread the webs, infect all the other places.
Because you're dropping so many dimes, and I love the fact that we had like a 15-minute conversation and I sent you a picture, and now you're like you took. I love it.
You're defining a repeatable solution, which is a product.
Yes.
So let's we are having our first land use planning, our soil committee meeting this week. I've actually, believe it or not, I've started doing the digital real estate, Emma, for Food Tribe's ecosystem. So maybe we can start talking about matching that to, the resources that we want to identify for land use.
Yeah.
We have to start figuring out how to allocate, or how to start, because, I think that we for sure want to retake a look at, our problem statement, and, incorporate some of the lessons. And so maybe I can extrapolate some keywords and phrases as a result of our conversation, because then what I want to do then is to get some updated. And if we can also find, you had mentioned some first party data that might be available online that we can maybe either interpret or consolidate for Marina and Luna and product team before we meet, something, a couple pages, right? So
I've got some papers that I've written too during my social impact classes. And my studies were in critical food studies, hon. I've got papers.
Dude. Oh man. Okay. All right. So we got about 6 minutes, guys. I want to, again, I was nervous to have this conversation, but I'm so grateful that I did. Again, like when we talk about new economy, like this is what it's like, right? Like founders can't be siloed in their little bubble and say, do. It has to be a little bit uncomfortable, and let's stretch and pull and, you know what I mean? And massage and work together. And I think that we can figure it out. I'm really proud of the way that, we handled this conversation. Does anybody want to, maybe contribute anything else before we move on and get us out of here?
Yeah, please take a look at the chat. Again, I'd like to consider that we actually represent the indigenous population of the world, and we are in fact here. So I'm just saying, let's do it, and then we can claim or spin it how we choose to. But I would like to ask us to realize the County of Los Angeles and the city both have sustainability plans. The entire world is focused on the sustainable development goals. Number 2 is zero hunger. This is a zero hunger project. To the extent that we package it that way, we can attract funding and support from around the world to replicate what we're doing throughout the state, the country, and the world.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I would, if I may.
Sure.
I would completely agree with that. Like, hunger is a solvable problem. I don't think at this point in our civilized society that hunger is something that we're still struggling with in terms of, like, we don't know what to do. It's very solvable, especially here in the United States. So like Andrew said, if we can frame it as a zero hunger project, let people know that, hey, we finally want to take a step forward and just taking the low-hanging fruit of solving, hunger. I really do agree that we can definitely get a lot of people on board with this. We just need to create the motivation, both on a social level as well as on a political level, to help facilitate the goals that we have in mind.
Yeah. And that's where, definitely Food Tribe is going to be contributing our resources. We've been, obviously like facilitating these meetings, but we're going to be offering some, my plan or my hope is, by the time that this committee expires on June 10th, we can then begin the process of putting together our point of view. The goal is between June 10th to September 10th. You know, obviously we want to have like a private board meeting where, you know, potentially we get some stakeholders, investors, some people that might be able to, you know, give this project some real legs. But then, you know, we also commit to a very public focused campaign, right? You know, on just raising awareness, getting people to make some of these behavioral changes, you know, telling them what's going on, you know, with this goal of a prototype on September 10th. Right. And, you know, the funding committee has been doing some pretty great things in order to help us get there. We've got about 3 minutes, so I want to keep us pushing, guys. If there's anything that you want to contribute or any sort of misunderstandings. Yes. Oh, there is.
Yeah, I apologize for being a lion here, but look, September 22nd is International Day of Peace. It's the most widely celebrated holiday around the world except for Earth Day. Again, everything we're doing has a global impact. I know you're saying, let's wrap this up on September 10th, but what about wrapping it up on September 22nd and then push everything we're doing, again, to have a global impact from the beginning? Just a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that date, Andrew. And, you know, again, my goal, again, 30 years, right? Like that is the chunk of my life I am committing to this problem of ending hunger. So September 22nd, that's an arbitrary number to me, right? That is a goal that we have put internally for ourselves. We have given ourselves a deadline, right? So that being said, I want you guys this week to hop into design thinking. I'll share a link to this. This is called a dream gripe session. So if we're considering like the circumstances, this problem that we're seeing, right? What's your gripe, right? And do it how you don't have to share this with me, you know, do this on your own, but think of, you know, what your gripe is and get real specific. Like, why is this a challenge? Why is this bugging you? I'll share you a link and then write what your dream scenario is. And again, we just want to start extrapolating that data and see if it's replicable, and then we can match that to other people, right? But I want us to get, you know, more and more familiar with this concept of empathizing with other people. Again, download and share the Restaurant Bailout Committee. It has answered some of the questions that I heard on today's call. So please, you know, just take a few minutes to get an understanding of some of the research that we've already done so that we can, you know, this is the first deliverable of our results. We've already got like 50 pages of content, right? So on June 10th, depending on what we're able to add on to this might be a 100-page report, you know, that all of our names are going to be on, that, you know, we're going to be supporting with the social media campaign, right? So let's, you know, let's make sure that this looks really good before, you know, we start promoting it to the rest of the world. Tomorrow there is a LA County Council meeting. I believe that they are all closed door right now. Just because of what's going on. Food Tribe is gonna, I'm gonna look to making it, to go out just for a bit tomorrow. I'm coming out from Joshua Tree just to, you know, put our name out there and see what's going on. I want the city of LA to know our faces and who we are. If you want to come hang out and grab a coffee, please let me know. We'll stay 6 feet away. Register for the Restaurant Bailout Committee so I know everything that you do and what makes you so special.
I need to do that.
Invite your friends. And then, you know, check out what we worked on last week. If there's anybody that you want to meet, let me know, and I will facilitate that. In terms of what we're working on this week, just real quick, product, we are continuing to compile our research report and to have our recommendation. In terms of our funding committee, there have been 2 opportunities for funding. We have preliminarily, or Food Tribe has preliminarily gotten approved for a PPP loan that I need to do some more stuff on, but my hope is to then use those funds to, you know, keep us going again past the September 22nd deadline. And then I had a really, really, really great call on Saturday regarding, you know, some of the stuff that we're talking about with like the county and the state and the federal government. They are directly investing into companies that include underrepresented founders. So, you know, more on that to come, but, you know, we're exploring the opportunity fund to help fund some of this. We are exploring, again, the PPP loan, disaster relief loan, and then also, again, we're looking at angels and investors, right? In terms of marketing, working on our editorial calendar, right? So we want to, once June 10th happens, we want to know like what the most important dates over the next 90 days, how we're going to be promoting. So that process is started. And then again, land use is meeting for the first time. So we're going to work on a spider web, really. It's to, you know, track like our footprint, but more on that to come. I've got some more marketing people. Mark hooked up with a great marketing contact that I'm going to follow up with. My friend Tori that I used to work with during my days at Dedicated Media. She is a VP She used to work with like iHeartMedia and like a bunch of other companies. So she has agreed to, take a look and support us. Steven, God bless his heart, he helped out with a link to a Comfort Foods a meeting that is taking place tomorrow, I believe. So that's on my calendar. And the county is meeting as well this week. So if you're not able to make it to the city council meeting, see if you can make it out to the council meeting. Let them know that you're showing up for our city, that you care, that you're not going to let them do all this stuff in the dark, that if we're being transparent, if we're open sourcing this business, they have to as well. Again, this is where we're blocked or stuck. So if you want to help, or if you want to start researching stuff, we have a swipe file that all team members should have access to. And that's where you can just dump interesting links, your perspective, things that you like, things that we should talk about, et cetera, et cetera. So please use that document. If you don't have access to it, I will share it with you. And again, guys, and it's possible to monetize your art without compromising it for the integrity of I totally messed that up, right? And it's possible to monetize your art without compromising it for the integrity of commerce. I want us to remember that Nipsey Hussle, this legend, died last year in the city that he loved, doing what he loved, right? And unfortunately, he had to become a martyr, but he believed in understanding the history. I actually read this great article. Nipsey Hussle quite literally studied, right, the history of Los Angeles before making the commitment to stay and to reinvest in his community. And I want the same for us. I want us to all be rich and wealthy, et cetera, right? But I think as part of this social contract, these people that we are looking to help, it's as much about us finding our purpose as putting their purpose and their needs at the forefront, and just knowing through that social investment, we're going to receive the return on the back end, right? So on that note, that's all that I got, guys. Do you have any questions before we hop out of here?
No, I just want everybody to take care of yourself right now. I am so exhausted and disturbed, and just, I know we're all spending a lot of time watching so we can witness. So, just everybody, take some time. It's okay to admit if you're tired. It's a tiring thing. And even having some time to rest is still contributing to continuing to fight. So take care of yourself, take moments for yourself, and we're gonna get through this.
Hey, couldn't have said it any better.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Emma.
Appreciate y'all.
Bye,
Be safe,
everybody.
okay? Love y'all.
Bye.
Guys, take care. Be safe.
Everyone be safe out there.
Thanks.